Your name is Clarinah?
Yes.
I know for a fact that the villain of the story, he only wore white. He dressed in white all the time.
Yes.
That is what I have been told. I have one picture of him where he is completely dressed in white.
Okay.
So your name is Saphir?
Yes, my name is Saphir.
We are in Hotel Memling because the villain of the film,
Yeah.
in 1965, he was staying here. And he was dressing the way I am dressing now. So first sentence is, this could either be
Yes.
the world's biggest murder mystery
Yes.
or the world's most idiotic conspiracy theory. If the latter is the case,
Yes.
I am very sorry.
Years ago today, this organization and much of the world as well was shocked by a totally unexpected tragedy. Dag Hammarskjöld, the Secretary General, was missing on a flight to Andola, and all hope was lost when the remains of the Secretary General's plane were sighted from the air. He was, in a very real sense, the world's first public servant.
So this is Andola.
This is Andola Airport. It's your first time to come here?
Yes.
Your name?
Mads Brügger.
Mads Brügger.
Brügger.
Sir here.
And my name is Göran.
I'm Mads.
Mads.
Yes, me, Mads.
Mads.
Your name is also Mads?
Yes.
That would be
Really?
really confusing. Can
Yes,
you read
Mads,
it?
M-A-S-S. That's my name.
It's exactly like my name. Nice to meet you, Mads.
Thank you.
But Mads, you know why we are here?
I don't know.
We are here because we are making a documentary about the death of Dag Hammarskjöld.
Oh, okay. After a long time.
Yes.
It's a cold case, you know?
Yeah.
No.
We want to find out if Hammarskjöld was the victim of a conspiracy.
Okay.
I mean, you've been doing your research for a long time?
6 years?
6 years? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. What is the title of your documentary?
The title?
Yes.
Cold Case Hammarskjöld.
Okay.
You think it's an okay title?
Do you have other titles?
No.
Okay. Then it means this one suits. So you have to leave it.
Now for the beginning of the film.
Yes.
The scene is I am in a hotel in Lumumbashi,
Yes.
in Katanga,
Yeah.
the old Leopold II hotel. I am sitting in a room playing solitaire, you know, the card game.
Yeah.
And while you see me playing solitaire, there is a narration. It's the 17th of September 1961. Dag Hammarskjöld, the Secretary General of the United Nations, boards a plane in the capital of the Congo. These are the last recordings made of him because a few hours later, around midnight, he will be killed in a plane crash.
I know that I'm speaking for all my fellow Americans, expressing our deep sense of shock and loss in the untimely death of the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Dag Hammarskjöld.
The death of Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld reverberated around the world. Officially, the plane crashed because of pilot error, a simple misreading of the altimeter. The UN later made their own investigation, which was undecided between pilot error and a possible attempt to bring the plane down. But right from the beginning, there were rumors about a conspiracy to kill Dag Hammarskjöld.
Första tanken, om jag vågar säga vad man tänker, att han har blivit mördad.
Much has been forgotten and much has been lost in the passage of time. But the questions remain. Was Dag Hammarskjöld murdered? And if so, who killed him? Did you know about Hammarskjöld?
No, I didn't know.
Dag Hammarskjöld became the UN Secretary General in 1953. At first, he was believed to be a boring Swedish technocrat, but in fact he was a flaming and strong-willed idealist.
It is very easy to bow to the wish of a big power. It is another matter to resist.
For Hammarskjöld, one of the most important tasks of the UN was to protect the African countries who had recently gained independence from the tactics of old colonial powers.
These new nations wish to build a life of progress in full independence. They look to the United Nations for moral, political and economic support.
This made him a lot of enemies amongst the old colonial powers. So, if there was a time where members of the UN were longing for the death of the Secretary General, it was during the reign of Dag Hammarskjöld.
Whatever happens, stick to your guns so that you can feel satisfaction with what you've done, whatever the outcome.
His plane crashed in the outskirts of a small mining town called Ndola, right on the border between the Congo and the British Protectorate of Rhodesia. It was the perfect kill room, isolated and far away from prying eyes and ears. Hammarskjöld was on his way to Ndola for peace talks with Mads Brügger, the rebel leader of the breakaway region Katanga. People need to know about Katanga. How Katanga in 1960 seceded from Congo, declared independence, and a war broke out. And it's important people understand that Katanga was basically the property of a giant Belgian corporation called Union Minière, a mining corporation. And it was more or less Union Minière who installed Mads Brügger as the leader of Katanga.
Yes.
As a figurehead, because right below him, the big mining corporations were running the show.
Okay.
And they brought in a lot of mercenaries.
In a perspective which may well be short rather than long, the problem facing the Congo is one of peace or war.
Dag Hammarskjöld, he wants to fix the Katanga crisis.
Yes.
So he brings in UN soldiers, he attacks the mercenary army of Katanga,
Yes.
thinking it would be a quick fix, but the mercenaries are hardcore. It's a disaster for the UN. Lots of civilians are killed, also UN soldiers. Backed by mining interests and European mercenaries, Katanga had seceded from the Congo, and a UN-led military operation to capture Mads Brügger and put an end to Katanga's secession from the Congo had backfired.
Mr. President, I regret that it has been necessary for me to call again the attention of the Security Council to the problem we are facing in the Congo.
So, the Americans, I think also the British, tell Dag Hammarskjöld, you have to fix this now. They're very angry at him.
Yes.
He has moved beyond his mandate. He has gone rogue. That is why he flies in, to Katanga for meeting with Mads Brügger, hoping that he can broker a peace deal with Mads Brügger and stop the fighting.
No.
Then he flies in, and just as the plane is about to land, it crashes and he dies.
Vad sa du? Vi ska...
We are making a we're doing a checkup on the equipment before we go to the burial site
Okay.
of the wreckage.
Yeah.
First of all, we need to have the pictures you have found.
This?
There? Yes. So they keep the wreckage of the Albertina Hammarskjöld's plane inside a seal hangar for many months. And then in 1962, they bury everything.
Yes.
And through this picture, we would be able to triangulate where the wreckage is buried.
Oh yes, that should be very possible, thanks to the buildings you can see up here. I think that's maybe the control tower, and there are some other buildings and the road here.
Let's go through the equipment I have prepared for us. There are 2 pith helmets, because we will be working in the sun to protect our Scandinavian skin. There are 2 shovels, because if possible, and nobody takes offense, we should be digging for the wreckage. And we will find the wreckage ultimately by using this missile detector with an extra powerful coil that are purchased for us in Johannesburg. And finally, if and when we find the wreckage, 2 Cuban cigars.
Fast jag röker ju inte.
Björkdahl.
Göran Björkdahl. What happened was this. Göran's father was a diplomat working for the UN. In that capacity, he visited the crash site on Ndola, where Hammarskjöld was killed. It was sometime in the 70s.
He was given a metal plate, which allegedly was coming from damaged planes.
Was coming from Hammarskjöld's plane. The plate had these strange, small, round little holes in it, which made Göran's father wonder. So he brought the metal plate back to Sweden and asked the Ministry of Foreign Affairs if they had any interest in it. They told him no.
They told him no.
Oh.
And so, many years later, when Göran's father is going to a nursing home for elderly people, Göran finds the metal plate amongst his father's belongings. He asks his father what the metal plate is about. And from that point onwards, Göran has been obsessed with the murder mystery of Dag Hammarskjöld.
All by himself, Göran does something groundbreaking. He travels to Ndola and begins tracking down the remaining black witnesses.
Over there then. Where was?
Inside.
It was that time, okay.
Black people were not taken seriously as witnesses. And furthermore, many of them were afraid to come forward.
You know, they were thinking, if they have killed Dag Hammarskjöld,
Yeah.
what will they do to me if I tell them what I know? They were charcoal burners living in the forest very close to the crash.
Yeah.
So they were the witnesses who were as close to the event as possible.
We could see the plane going to the airport to land. But suddenly, I don't know what happened, the lights went off at the airport.
They talk about another plane in the air which is shooting at Dag Hammarskjöld's plane.
You said you heard a sound.
Yes, another sound.
Another sound.
Yes, that sound was like a jet.
Pia! Tawale isayo. Mukumana kweswa mwenefi. Pia! Ya dege kalamba no be ari kadika leso munuma ni kambi. Yo echo gari lile boom. Ele omuliro atambulimo kwa kapamulo.
I told my boss, Mr. Jimmy James, he was my boss at that time. He was a Breton. And I said, something happened. What happened? There were no lights. The lights were switched off at the airport. And he just told me.
It came from the east because the pilot, made a long turn to avoid Katanga airspace. And the plane continued towards the west, that side. And it disappeared in the horizon. And just when it disappeared in the horizon over there was a bright red flash.
Over there?
Over there, yes. People in Ndola saw it.
Yeah.
Many people saw it.
And what about Martin, who was here manning the tower?
Yeah, the radio controller, Martin, he claims he didn't see it, which is strange because normally he should have been sitting inside the tower looking in that direction. He said he didn't see it. And that's not the only strange thing. Martin, of course, he took notes. A controller has to take notes of the conversation with the pilots. He took notes, but for some reason, he destroyed his notes the next day. So 2 days after the crash, he had to rewrite his notes.
Göran begins looking for the killers. Göran goes to London. In the Travelers Club, he meets with a former American NSA officer, a man named Charles Southall.
Now it has started. Yes.
Hello, I'm Charles Southall.
NSA is an American intelligence organization.
I was a naval officer.
They are basically spying on the whole world.
I was home with my young family and received a telephone call saying, you really should come out to the station around midnight because something interesting is going to happen. And shortly after midnight, a recording came through from somewhere down in Africa. I don't remember where it came from, and I probably didn't even know at the time. But one of the watch supervisors commented that this is history, and it's only 7 minutes old. And it was a recording of a man that we were aware of, a Belgian mercenary pilot, who we called the Lone Ranger. He apparently was up in a fuga magister. He said, I see a transport coming in low. I'm going down to take a look at it. And he said, I'm going to make a run on it. And then you could hear, this was really chilling, you could hear the gun cannon firing, rat-tat-tat. And he said, I've hit it. There are flames coming out of it. And quite quickly he said, it's crashed. And that was the end of the recording. And we processed this recording and sent it off to Washington. And we all went home then. At the time we heard this recording, I did not know this was the aircraft that was transporting Dag Hammarskjöld and his staff and his personal security people.
Here you can see the control tower. So this spot, it must be just down here. Just down there, actually.
Yeah. My big ambition is to bring it up.
All of it has to come out.
Yes, because of new technology.
No, you only have 2 shovels. Or you have to find it first. I saw you only 2 shovels.
First I have to find it.
Okay.
Because of new technology, if you can re-examine the wreckage, it is possible to say, was there explosives involved? Yeah. We will come back in the morning with the metal detector, and then we will try to sweep to see if there's anything there.
Okay. Yeah. Probably about somewhere there.
Yeah, it must be somewhere.
Yeah, it's very close here.
There were never taken any so-called in-situ pictures of Dag Hammarskjöld's body. Pictures of the body as it looked like when it was found at the crash site. The first pictures were taken after he had been moved on to a stretcher. And here, in the shirt collar of Dag Hammarskjöld, a playing card can be seen. And by the way, this playing card is not mentioned in the autopsy report. But, you may ask, what kind of playing card was it? The first civilian photographer admitted to the crash site, a man named Norman Kenward, claims to know the answer.
Yes, I was the local photographer, and in the early afternoon, I say early afternoon, I received a telephone call asking me if I had heard anything about the Dag Hammarskjöld plane crashing.
Who was it calling you?
A police officer.
Yes.
He said to me, my advice to you is have your cameras ready. And with that, I immediately jumped in the car with no other assistance with me, and I raced towards Ndola.
How many days did it take to find his bodies?
It took 15 hours.
15 hours.
Yes. But it crashed 8 miles from the airport.
Okay.
And there was a big fire, you know.
I went there with my friend, but still there was a very big fire in the morning.
Yeah.
So it must have been easy to see.
As I arrived at the crash site, I parked my car and got the equipment I needed, my camera, Rolleiflex camera. As I walked along the track, to the left of me was a pile of bodies. All right? I casually said to one of the persons there, I said, oh, you know, what's going on? Oh, he said, we're putting Hammarskjöld into the ambulance.
You know, it's complicated because when they found his body at the crash site...
It's really a mystery story.
No, but when they found his body at the crash site,
Yeah.
all the other passengers, most of them, they were totally burned
Okay.
and in bits and pieces all over the place.
Yeah.
But Hammarskjöld, he was just lying on the
floor,
ground,
yeah.
you know, like this,
Yes.
remarkably undamaged.
Okay, he was lying like that.
Yes.
And then comes the most important detail.
So a few days later, you meet the exact same police officer in the
Correct.
streets. And you have a conversation which you choose to keep secret for a great many years.
Yes. And he said, oh, by the way, he said, did you hear about Hammarskjöld? I said, well, you know, I believe he was dead or died or whatever. He said, oh, he said, did you see him up close? I said, no, I did not. He said, well, between you and me, rumour, and I say rumour has it, he had the death card in his collar. So I said, the death card? I said, the ace of spades. He said, yes. I said, my goodness, you know, what a coincidence sort of thing, you know. By the way, he said, please, Norman, don't mention that to anyone. He said, after all, it's not released officially to anyone.
Well, there's nothing here.
No.
That's interesting.
That makes it a bit strange.
Yeah, I mean, the code, that would actually fit with the map.
Yep.
If the burial spot is there, it should make a sound there and not over here. Yeah. So yeah, that makes sense.
Okay.
So just to be 100% sure, should we check out the other place? Can you read that sentence to me?
Yeah. In September 2013, the story moved beyond the rule of conspiracy theory for the senior citizens.
Yes, because it's only old people who remember Dag Hammarskjöld.
Okay.
No, what happened is they have a press conference in the Peace Palace where a commission of jurists
Yeah.
who have been investigating the case presents their conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
The Commission will present the report on its inquiry into the cause of death of the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Dag Hammarskjöld, in 1961.
The purpose of the report is to evaluate the new body of evidence uncovered about the death of Dag Hammarskjöld, not least thanks to the work of Göran Björkdahl.
I may say, Mr. Björkdahl, that we've been very much assisted by the research that you've made available to us.
Thanks. The Commission had asked the US National Security Agency, the NSA, if they had any records in their archives matching the description of intercepted radio traffic given by former NSA officer Charles Southall.
The archive's response, as we record in section 15.12, has been that of 3 documents or records which appear to respond to our request, 2 are classified top secret on national security grounds.
This means, yes, we have the records you're looking for, but you cannot have them. But even more interesting is the question of whether a bomb had been planted in Dag Hammarskjöld's plane. When the UN did their first investigation of the crash back in 1962, it was discovered that Dag Hammarskjöld's plane, the Avvicinano, had been left completely unguarded at the airport for at least 2 hours before takeoff, which would make it possible for a determined person to plant a bomb inside the plane. But, as the investigators wrote at the time, this is no more than a theory, not even supported by circumstantial evidence.
What nevertheless lends apparent substance to the bomb theory is the batch of documents purportedly originating from a body called the South African Institute for Marine Research. Maritime Research? Maritime Research.
So now we are going to South Africa.
Are you going to talk about the Madiba story?
About what?
What happened there?
About apartheid?
Yes.
Yes. Because, you know, in 1998,
yeah,
the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they are closing down.
In August 1998, having spent more than 4 years investigating the crimes of the apartheid regime, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was closing down. To mark the end of their work, they held a final press conference in Cape Town, chaired by Archbishop Desmond Tutu.
It is a very special moment for all of us. We have discovered in the course of our investigations documents purporting to be from an institution called the South African Institute of Maritime Research, discussing the sabotage of the aircraft in which the United Nations Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld died on the night of September 1961.
Has everybody got a copy of this set of documents? Institute for Maritime Research. How many are missing? Sorry, just indicate.
The documents comes from, allegedly from a shadowy private paramilitary intelligence organization known as the South African Maritime Research Institute. And they are the manuscript for killing Dag Hammarskjöld.
The full set of documents discovered in the vaults of South Africa's Secret Service was said to consist of 12 pages, but the originals have since vanished in South African state archives. What remains are blurred photocopies of 9 pages, outlining a plot to kill Dag Hammarskjöld with a bomb. The documents say that Hammarskjöld had to be removed because the United Nations had become troublesome. Among the conspirators, British intelligence is mentioned, as well as the American intelligence service, the CIA.
Do you know whether the institute still exists?
Yes, in fact, when we got this document, which was about a few months ago, the first thing that we did was to send an investigator to establish whether, in fact, there is an institute of this nature. We are of the view that there is an institute, though in a different form or a slightly different form.
But none of the journalists went to look for the institute themselves. Maybe because the British Foreign Office, as well as the CIA, quickly scrambled to bury the story as a piece of Cold War misinformation planted by the Russians. As a result, the South African Institute for Maritime Research, or in short SIMAR, remains mostly uncharted territory.
It is not impossible that the account carried by these documents is genuine, but it is just as possible that they are a well-informed fabrication.
Are you talking?
No, now I will be dictating.
Dictating, okay.
What little we know about SIMAR today is thanks to the South African journalist David Potgieter. Back in the early 90s, he met with a man who claimed to be the Commodore of SIMAR, a man named Keith Maxwell.
He described himself as commander of the SIMAR's military unit, Delta. And what he told me, he said that the unit is the successor of an 184-year-old organization first formed by a group of British mariners. Preferring to remain anonymous, the group's interests are diverse. Some orders come from London and others are initiated here in South Africa.
David Potgieter takes the only photo known to me of Maxwell. This is him. The leader of SIMAR, the Commodore. You see how he's dressed in white?
White, yes.
I think because SIMAR was a maritime organization, so they claimed to be. But Maxwell was also posing as a doctor.
And in some quarters, he referred to himself as Dr. Maxwell Annandale, but he was not a medical doctor or any doctor of any sort. And from what I've gathered, what I've seen in the surgery, there were black women lying on beds with funny machines making beep sounds, and he was sort of experimenting on black people.
Maxwell is dead now.
Yeah.
But while being there, I managed to find the widow of Maxwell.
Yes.
Her name is Diane.
Mm-hmm.
And I speak with her on the phone while I'm driving around during nighttime on the highways of Johannesburg.
My marriage was very difficult, and that's the way it is. It became very difficult for me, and I don't enjoy the past being brought up, actually.
Can I ask, were you afraid of Keith? Was he abusive?
Not particularly, no. Nobody, mentally, maybe.
Yes. Did he ever mention the former United Nations Secretary General Dag Hammarskjöld?
I think he might have mentioned it once or twice, maybe, but he didn't say much. He just said that this chap had died, and that was about it.
Do you know anything about SIMAR, the South African Maritime Research Institute? Did he share any information with you about that?
That was a little organization that my husband set up for some reason or other, yes.
But what did he tell you that the organization was about?
What it was about?
Yeah?
Just set it up. I don't know why he set it up. If you want my frank opinion, I think my husband was probably a little bit mentally ill. And at the end I said he thought he was a bit mentally ill, and I thought he was just playing games. I knew he used to play games, but just playing with other people's minds to see what they would do.
And she tells me some very disturbing things about Maxwell.
Okay.
How he liked to manipulate other people, play with their minds, how abusive and evil he was.
Yeah. How evil he was.
Well, you know what he did?
No.
He was running a number of clinics in the black townships.
Yes.
Pretending to be a medical doctor.
Yeah.
The surgery where David Potgieter met Keith Maxwell in the early 90s is now gone.
Ja, want hij is...
Keith Annandale of Keith Maxwell Annandale as a double barrel surname.
Ja, want hij zou eerder uitkomen als Keith Maxwell. Keith Maxwell Annandale.
But Potgieter discovers that Maxwell had more than one surgery.
The old lady is inside here.
Keith Maxwell Annandale.
Oh yeah. Was he a doctor or something?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, he had a place on the road there, but it used to be the old post office.
Oh, he had the surgery here.
That's correct.
Oh, I see.
That's interesting.
Oh, yeah, he was always wearing a white safari suit.
That's correct.
We discovered that he was running a number of clinics in the townships around Johannesburg, offering medical assistance to black people at a very low cost.
Oh yeah, we haven't even the name.
There's it.
Yeah,
This is my
exactly.
place.
Yeah.
Come stand here, then you can have it nicely. Come stand here. Dr. Maxwell. There's it.
And at that point in time, Göran and I, we had difficulties finding out what these clinics were about. Why was he running these clinics? And people we talked to tells us about how he was experimenting on black people.
I can just find his car in the whole Patfontein. That's his car there.
Oh, that's his car.
The clients who came here, did they seem to be satisfied with the treatment that they got?
No.
They were not?
It was more of a chance, because I used to sit with him and see what they do,
Quack.
Then they try and quack, more quack, He make his money out of this. And you have a drum there and put them in the drum and roll them and then, give them just false injections,
Yes. But
you have injections to them also?
Yeah.
He was a surgeon.
Surgery.
Yeah, he was a surgeon.
When you come here, also getting the plenty people sitting outside waiting for a doctor. I know his name because at home I think I'm called
Dr. Maxwell.
Yeah.
Was it Dr. Maxwell?
Yeah. Was the old man guy. Put it on the tea, put it on the machine. Press your hands.
There's some mystery about him, I used to do his own little things,
But apparently he was very quiet and...
Oh, very, very quiet. But the sharpshooter. Yeah, they came to rob him. And he shot one or two guys dead. He was very good with a firearm. I think even before he shot someone. But the expert in guns, of course, he was a mercenary,
He was a mercenary.
Yeah, so he knows.
He said that.
Right?
He said that.
Yeah,
he
he
had
used
been a
to,
mercenary.
they used to when they hired out to go to Congos and all those in African countries.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he ever talk about a man named Dag Hammarskjöld? Dag Hammarskjöld.
Doesn't come into my mind.
Maxwell and Potgieter met several times. Maxwell fed Potgieter lots of documents from the files of Seymour, amongst them the first part of a fictionalized account of Maxwell's life entitled The Story of My Life.
There you are.
It's the story of Maxwell's life, but fictionalized.
It tells how, as a young man, Maxwell is recruited into Seymour in the memoir simply called The Marine Institute. At a farm outside of Johannesburg, Maxwell is being trained with other Seymour cadets, all dressed in whites. They are given lessons in psychological warfare and the dark arts in general. Maxwell's handler in Seymour is a strict and stern officer named Robert Wagman. At the end of Maxwell's training, Commander Wagman sends him to the Congo on a clandestine mission for the Marine Institute. In the Congo, Maxwell ends up at a secret jungle laboratory funded and operated by the US Army. Here, research is being done into biological warfare and how to weaponize viruses. Finally, Keith Maxwell, who calls himself Ken Marshall in his memoir, has a fallout with the commander of the jungle laboratory, who expels Maxwell from the premises. Maxwell then travels to the capital of the Congo, stays at Hotel Memling for a while, and then goes back to South Africa. Here, the memoir breaks off, unfinished. Not a word is written about Dag Hammarskjöld and how he died in September 1961.
I'm a bit confused because it's a lot of names and a lot of people that are mentioned here.
It is a very complicated story. Maybe too complicated.
The reason for making it complicated is, of course, the 9 secret documents released by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission back in 1998, outlining a conspiracy to kill Dag Hammarskjöld.
The code name for the operation to kill Dag Hammarskjöld was Operation Celeste.
Today, 20 years later, the Operation Celeste papers from Saphir remain a complete mystery. No one knows who wrote them, nor why or when. If the documents are to be trusted as genuine, it is first and foremost necessary to prove that Saphir did exist as a real organization. The best way to do this would be to find other members of Saphir besides Keith Maxwell, because in theory, all of this could be an elaborate hoax embedded in reality by Keith Maxwell. The Operation Celeste papers mention a secret agent codenamed Congo Red, who works for Saphir in the Congo. They also tell how the explosives for the bomb to kill Dag Hammarskjöld were provided by the Belgian mining corporation Union Minière. The bomb fails to explode at takeoff, but the agent Congo Red writes that a contingency plan was activated. An Eagle is being dispatched, most likely a reference to a jet fighter, and just as Dag Hammarskjöld's plane is about to land at Ndola Airport, the plane crashes and he dies.
And in the end, Congo Red confirms the job has been done.
Besides Congo Red, we have an agent for the CIA codenamed Dwight. He is to meet his liaison from Saphir at the old Leopold II Hotel in the capital of Katanga, today the Park Hotel. There's no trace left of Dwight having stayed at the hotel in 1961. The only real names given in the Operation Celeste papers are names of senior Saphir officers. We have a Commodore R. Wagner, probably the same person as Commander Robert Wagman, the officer who was in charge of the Marine Institute in Maxwell's memoir. This man seems to be impossible to track down, and so are Dr. Pike and Captain Ian Kerr. So, the only confirmed member of Saphir so far is Keith Maxwell. But there could be other members of Saphir. I did manage to find this article, which was published in the Sunday Times magazine in South Africa in 1989. Here, a young woman named Debbie Campbell talks about how she works for Saphir and Dr. Keith Maxwell. Debbie talks about how she was recruited into Saphir out of school when she was only 13, and how she now does research at Maxwell's AIDS clinic. But Debbie Campbell seems to have vanished from the face of the earth. My quest to track her down has been in vain, and the journalist who wrote the article claims she has forgotten all about it. Luckily, there are other names to work on. In the trove of Saphir documents, which Keith Maxwell handed over to journalist David Potgieter, several people are mentioned, including a South African doctor named Claude Newbury.
Good afternoon. Hello, Mr. Newbury.
Yes, hello.
I'm Mads Brügger. I'm a journalist from Denmark.
How do you do?
Fine, thank you. And this is Göran Björkdahl, whom you spoke with on the phone.
Yes, we spoke on the phone. Yeah.
I'm interested how you guys get my mobile number.
Dr. Newbury, who is known in South Africa as a pro-life anti-abortion campaigner, confirms having befriended Keith Maxwell.
He was a very pleasant person and very humorous. He was the sort of person who made lots and lots of jokes. You know, he could make a joke easily. One evening, we were invited to a dinner, and he said, "Well, would you like to become a member of SIMAR?" So I said, "Well, what does it entail?" And it seemed to entail only the investigation, the research into sunken treasure.
And please go on. Well, what happens that evening?
There was a little bit of a ceremony. He had been dressed up like an admiral in the British Navy from about 250 years ago, you know, with a tricorn hat and a cutlass and a naval uniform with lots of buttons, and that was it.
Who was wearing that
dress? That was Mr. Maxwell.
He was dressed like that?
Yes, yes. And then at a later stage, he asked me about what I thought about the AIDS virus.
And what did he tell you?
Well, he indicated that he thought it was a product of biological warfare.
In fact, Keith Maxwell was obsessed with AIDS, writing extensively about how SIMAR was doing research into the HIV virus and the possibility of using the virus as a weapon to kill black people.
Sorry, Max. Would you tell me, was he affected with AIDS?
Who? Maxwell?
Yeah.
No. No, but he was interested in using AIDS to kill black people. In his master plan, Keith Maxwell writes about how AIDS will play an important role in South Africa's political future. As refugees from the disease pour into South Africa from the north, they will bring the virus with them, and the black population with whom they mingle will become infected on a large scale. As a result, Maxwell concludes, South Africa will have a white majority in the year 2000.
That's not the person that I know. Maxwell was trying to discover a cure for the HIV virus. He wanted me at one time to join or to start a clinic in a building out in Benoni where he had visualized a medical clinic. Now, he wasn't a medical doctor and I am a medical doctor. And when I said to him, no, I wasn't prepared to do that, he seemed to be very upset with me, and that was the end of our relationship.
Another person mentioned in the SIMAR documents is a man named René Gord. According to the documents, he was second in command in the South African Institute for Maritime Research, working directly under Commodore Keith Maxwell in the early 90s.
Göran and I went to visit him.
Yes. And you know what happens? He comes out of the building. We ask him if he is René Gord, who was in charge of SIMAR, second in command after Maxwell. He says absolutely not. He has never been involved with SIMAR. Then we show him some SIMAR documents with the signature of René Gord.
Is this, I mean, here we have a document.
Yeah.
Signed by René Gord. Is not.
That is my signature.
It is yours?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how can we explain that?
I don't know.
How is that possible?
Well, work it out.
And we ask, how come? And then he says he is the victim of identity theft. But have they used that identity theft, you know, for taking out bank loans, buying cars?
Nothing.
Only for this?
Yeah, it appears to be.
But that is bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre.
Do you know a man named René Gord?
Yes, I used to know him. I haven't seen him for many, many years.
Was he a friend of Keith?
I think they were in acting classes together. They did drama.
They did drama?
Acting classes. Yeah, you know, put on plays and stuff.
You know, we just try to find out what kind of organization SIMAR was and what they were doing. We don't try to incriminate anybody, so just try to get the information.
We also spoke to a source who said that you did drama classes together with Keith Maxwell.
No, I did do drama classes, yes.
Really?
Yes.
What year?
No, I can't remember.
Before the 90s?
Wasn't that with Keith Maxwell?
I can't remember.
You weren't a close friend to Keith Maxwell?
No.
What kind of drama was it? What kind of...
Nothing serious.
Was it like Shakespeare or?
No, not at all.
Was it improv?
Improvisation.
Yeah.
That handwriting under the signature, is that yours? This handwriting here.
That is my handwriting.
It is your handwriting?
Yeah, it is my handwriting.
So it's also you writing, Lieutenant Commander?
No, not me, but it is my handwriting. It is my handwriting, but I don't know this document.
Why on earth would Keith Maxwell and his cohorts go to these lengths with stealing your identity?
I don't know, because I don't know the background of this organization. I don't know what they were up to. Really, I have no idea.
The Saphir papers also mention a South African general named Tini Grunewald.
Tini Grunewald, former general and chief director of military intelligence, former air attaché at the South African Embassy in London.
And coming back, at a particular time he came back and he sort of became chief of military intelligence. So since then he's been involved in intelligence work, military intelligence, all his life.
Göran and I, we go to visit Grunewald. And Grunewald tells us that he met 2 times with Maxwell.
He was neatly dressed, he was well-spoken. He appeared to be someone who was in authority.
He even has Maxwell's name written in his calendar. Maxwell comes to meet Grunewald and tells him if he is interested in...
Before apartheid? Or?
No, just before apartheid ends.
Yes.
In the last days of apartheid.
Yes.
Maxwell comes to meet Grunewald and tells him if he wants weapon and money for arming white people to go up against black people.
Black people.
Like a civil war.
Okay.
Maxwell can help him.
He had the resources to use violence and to supply weapons and so on and so forth. But I was convinced that he was financed and directed by MI6 of British intelligence. How? After spending 3.5 years in Britain, you get to know some people involved in the intelligence field. And certain of the names which I mentioned in our discussions was familiar to him. Which told me, well, obviously he knows these people.
So Grunewald was convinced that Maxwell was working for MI6, British intelligence. And because of that, he told him no. And they never meet again. That is very interesting. What is also interesting is that I asked Grunewald if he has ever heard about SIMAR, South African Maritime Research Institute, and Grunewald says never.
No, I can't see this organization as really playing a significant part. If they did, I would have known about it.
Do you have the Operation Celeste papers, right, Göran?
Some of them, yes, they're here.
Could you show them to the general, just to get his,
Yes, of course. I mean, I don't know if you've seen these particular papers, but this is of, I think, 4 documents. Here's one, giving some orders.
You see, now my question always is this authentic, or is this, did they try and create an impression that the CIA, for example, was involved? Because it's very easy to do this. Yeah. Let me say that you would be very, very careful if the CIA was involved of putting something like this on paper. If you do it, then it's highly, it's not professional. Not professional at all.
I don't even know what to think now. But if it was something real, wouldn't this person who was the commander of the military, know anything about it?
Exactly. How come Grunewald had never heard about Saphir?
Sorry, did you finish the story with Rita?
About Saphir?
Yeah.
And
About Maxwell and...
Yes, for now, because we come back to South Africa later.
Yeah, okay.
So this camera guy was standing somewhere there, and they took it that way.
You still have the road here?
No, but listen, it is here. I'm getting a massive reading.
Yeah.
It is here.
Yeah, it's here. We found it.
It is freaking out.
Yeah, we found it. It's here. Yeah. Yeah, so we found the spot.
The question is, how deep down is it?
That's the question.
You can see on the photos, it's 3-4 meters.
Deep.
According to this.
Yeah.
Can we do some digging here?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Now something very interesting happens. It's April 2014.
Yes.
A cable sent from U.S. ambassador to the Congo, Ed Guillon,
Yeah.
on 18 September 1961, is declassified. The cable from Ambassador Ed Guillon to U.S. State Department was transmitted hours before the crash site was located officially. The ambassador informs that Hammarskjöld's plane may have been shot down by a Belgian mercenary pilot, identified by a usually reliable source as Van Rissegel. He misspells the name a little bit, but it's Jan van Rissegem, a Belgian mercenary pilot. Here, Rissegem is seen in his Fuga Magister 93, the jet fighter most likely to have been used for attacking Dag Hammarskjöld's plane. The only problem is Jan van Rissegem is dead. In Spain, we meet former Belgian paratrooper Pierre Coppens, who was a friend of Rissegem.
I met Jan van Rissegem in 1965. He was the pilot of the National Parachutism Center, a military center in Morcel.
And gradually, Rissegem tells Coppens that he was the one who attacked Dag Hammarskjöld's plane.
He explained me that the distance was too long.
Yes.
So, he can arrive to the destination, but he cannot come back.
And from where did he take off?
Kipushi.
Kipushi?
Yes. Kipushi.
Donc, comme vous avez vu, c'est ça l'ancien aérodrome de Kipushi.
But he said that I take off from in the jungle, so in the bush,
yes.
On a runway who was made by the bulldozer from the Union Minière.
Alors, juste après, les gens ont pris parce que y avait une couche de base de moellons, donc des cailloux de la mine.
They had the gravel.
Que les gens ont
gravel
pris. Oh, oui.
Level, but people have taken it.
Oh, oui.
But then he explained me another thing that nobody knows.
This is where we believe Van Rissegem took off in his Fuga Magister, 17 September 1961.
Yeah. We believe he was capable. It was not normally long enough for a jet plane, but he had a special technique, for when taking off and landing with the plane.
He make a small tank that he puts down. I believe he put this tank down the airplane or on the wings.
He attached an extra gasoline tank to the plane.
He said, then I have a more reserve for starting. So because I push, he push a lot of power.
Yes.
To take off.
Yes. Hold it there. So it's night. Van Rissegem flies his Fuga to Andola, and there he intercepts Hammarskjöld's plane.
Yes.
Okay. Kali ka nono na kali chikun.
The plane was taking the glides.
Yes.
To land, no? With full lights.
Hammarskjöld's plane.
Yes.
Yes.
And he say, I arrive on the back. From the back, I arrive. And so he shot.
And did he say where on the airplane he shot?
Somewhere.
On the left wing. Yes, because the wing tanks.
Okay.
When you have ammunition with explosive, you just shot on the wing and it will explode.
This is, in fact, a picture of the person who basically killed Dag Hammarskjöld.
Yes. Yes.
But did Van Rissinghem feel any kind of remorse?
No.
No?
No.
Nothing?
No.
Did he tell you who gave him the order to bring down the plane?
No.
But what is interesting is we also learned that Rissinghem was Belgian and British. And during the war, he worked for the Royal Air Force, specializing in nighttime operations. And his code name was the Lone Ranger.
The Lone Ranger was his name in England in the World War II.
Oh.
Because he was flying with an Hawker Hurricane, always nighttime and always alone.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So he was known as the Lone Ranger?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was a man that we were aware of, a Belgian mercenary pilot who we called the Lone Ranger.
Was it your impression that in army circles, mercenary circles, that people knew that Van Rissinghem was the one who brought down Hammarskjöld's plane?
In Brussels, yes. When some people talk about Van Rissinghem, I said, everybody know that he shot down this plane. And
it was common knowledge.
Yes.
But how come that nobody has spoken to the press, the media, about it?
This is a copy of Jan van Rissinghem's pilot logbook from his time in the Congo. The only period not accounted for in the logbook are the days shortly before and after the death of Dag Hammarskjöld. Furthermore, the one writing in his pilot logbook is his wife, Marion. So, how is that to be trusted? Hello, Ms. Van Rissinghem. My name is Mads Brügger. I'm a journalist from Denmark.
Ik weet niet wat dat is allemaal.
Well, it's about... this is Göran Björkdahl. He's from Sweden.
No, not this Hammarskjöld thing again.
It's Hammarskjöld. But do you have just 2 minutes? I just need to ask you a very important question. Oh. Then, soon after, Göran, the UN appoints an expert panel of 3 persons. Acting on the report from the Commission of Jurists, the UN appoints a 3-person expert panel tasked with evaluating the new body of evidence in the Dag Hammarskjöld crash. And they learn about Göran's metal plate. Remember? The one with the little holes?
Det här är en del av
planet?
Förmodligen en del av planet. Ja.
På riktigt?
Ja.
Vad häftigt. Så det fanns en historia om det på riktigt?
Ja, just det. Nej, men det är så att FN har tillsatt en panel av experter som ska titta på huruvida han blivit mördad. Jag ska lämna den här till dem ikväll. Så att de ska försöka undersöka om det verkligen är en del av det planet. Det är nästan säkert, men det är svårt att bestämma.
And they come to Stockholm to meet with Göran, and he hands over the metal plate. We are hoping, of course, that this metal plate is the smoking gun. It's a bit like in films when people have to dig their own grave. I just need a time out, Göran. I'm about to be throwing up.
Oh, Jesus. Can I give a hand?
Göran, did you have the gel?
Yes.
Because I'm having blisters.
Yeah. If they're broken, it may be good to clean them. It hurts a lot. It hurts a lot.
Thank you. Saphir, you remember I told you Göran met with the three-man expert panel in Sweden.
Yeah.
They took the metal plate to FBI laboratories in the USA.
Yeah.
And they tested the plate. And the conclusion was the plate has zero probative value.
Yeah.
It has never been inside a plane. It probably comes from a Land Rover. And the holes in it does not come from ammunition.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
It's bad news for Göran. Amazingly, we are given permission to start digging inside the airport. But then suddenly someone calls from Lusaka and tells the airport to stop this. They don't want us to be digging for the wreckage.
Okay.
So, also close, but no cigar.
Permission has to come from somewhere else.
My principle is that it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
No.
No.
Okay. No, in the airport, no. In the airport, it's better to ask for permission than forgiveness.
Isn't that a bit too early?
It's never too early for cigars, Göran.
You're shaking.
Yeah. All the activities with looking for the wreckage has really gone to my nerves.
I thought you were a cool man, Mads.
No, but the feeling you have when you're really close to something, but then you're further away than ever before.
Is that the reason the story is still a mystery?
What?
That's the reason it became also fiction of it?
No, it's not. This is not fiction.
Okay.
This is a documentary.
A documentary. All right.
But to be honest, I was never really interested in the legacy of Dag Hammarskjöld because at the end of the day, most people have never heard about Dag Hammarskjöld, and when you get to see him, he comes across as a goofy character from a screwball comedy.
The explanation is a very simple one.
For me, Dag Hammarskjöld was most of all a ticket to all the things I really enjoy. Tracking down Belgian mercenaries, telling tales of evil men who dress in white, the ace of spades found at crime scenes, rumors about secret African societies. That is why I went along for the ride, not really knowing where it would lead. For 6 years, Göran and I worked the murder case. We traveled all over Africa and Europe, roaming around in archives and conducting enormous amounts of interviews with elderly white liver-spotted men.
We did have a few wins along the way. In the archives of a former British spy, we discovered a never-before-seen telex from the rebel leader of Katanga, Moise Tshombe, to the Prime Minister of the British Protectorate, Rhodesia. Here, Tshombe asked for having 2 fighter jets delivered immediately. The telex stated the day before Hammarskjöld was to come to Ndola for peace talks with Tshombe. But no one knows if the fighter jets were ever delivered. And not to forget, we found this never-before-published picture of Hammarskjöld's plane after the crash. It shows a big hole in the tail fin, but when all is said and done, it's just a hole, and who knows? So I began looking for a way out, because one thing I do care about is my own legacy. It's because when they found Hammarskjöld's body, he had a playing card in his shirt collar. And I met a man who told me that he was at the crash site, that the playing card sitting in his shirt collar was the Ace of Spades. If Göran Björkdahl and I did not manage to crack open the case, I would employ all the old tricks of my trade. Costume play and role play, pith helmets and dressing up like Dr. Maxwell. This is also why I hatched the idea about employing not only one, but 2 African secretaries, hoping they would somehow save my shipwrecked film with their mere presence. If you ask me why 2 secretaries, not one, I cannot explain it. So, Clarinah, where were we? It was an experiment. In short, I was hoping this charade would cover up my failures as a journalist. But instead, something much worse happened. All my fantasies came true. To be more precise, unknowingly, Göran Björkdahl and I were on the verge of discovering a kind of horror which would put all my shenanigans to shame.
Yeah, there's still some question marks here.
There's a lot of question marks, Göran.
Yeah.
I think one of us have to go back to South Africa to study Saphir more, to really get to the heart of the matter. You have a list in front of you.
Yes.
What kind of list is that?
That is a list of people who responded to an advert that Keith Maxwell put out in 1989 when he was looking for mercenaries who then could be willing to sign up for a military operation in Africa.
For Saphir?
For Saphir, yes.
We have this long list of names, and we're basically going through all the names, trying to find their phone numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I am calling because of a list of men who responded to adverts from a group known as Saphir.
Yes.
I believe you are one of them.
Yes.
What can you tell me about this group?
Well, we cannot talk about it yet. It's a bit dangerous, so we are not too keen on talking about things.
My own involvement in the forces that be at the time and the implications thereof and what we had to do and get up to, well, I don't know if I'm willing to divulge anything on that.
Okay, but can you at least confirm that Saphir was real, that it did exist at one point in time?
I can't, I'm not at the liberty of speaking about it, sir.
What I did. What I did, as far as I'm concerned, I was doing the correct thing. And yeah, we'll leave it at that. All right, you must find other people that are maybe willing to discuss it, because I'm definitely not.
So where'd you get my number from? It's not open to the public.
Yeah, since most of these people have shown to be unwilling to speak on the phone, we will just go to their houses and try to approach them. Some may just tell us to fuck off, and others may be willing to talk.
Göran and I, we find the street address corresponding to one of the names, a man named Clive.
You're speaking about the maritime research. You're speaking about that?
Yes.
Oh, no, I've done training with him for about 3 months.
3 months?
And then afterwards, everything just went basically quiet.
Okay.
I can try and look. I know I've got a certificate that I was issued with from the maritime.
You do?
I have
that?
I have got a certificate. So.
Could you find that for us? That would be a great help.
Yes, I can find it for you. Here we go. This was 1993.
Incredible. Look,
1993.
Göran, it is the real deal. He went to a secret Saimar training camp outside Johannesburg, where they were wearing white clothes. But I know, Clive, it's a long time ago, but can you recollect names of anybody in charge of Saimar when you were there?
There was one guy from the NCIS, whatever, the intelligence bureau, I remember, and there was an American guy.
An American guy?
Curly hair, black hair with a moustache.
The American guy is Robert Cedars. His resume reads like a real-life Rambo. Ex-Green Beret, ex-mercenary, he has worked for the Anglo-American Mining Corporation and the King of Afghanistan. And among his listed interests are parapsychology and rock and roll.
Do you remember a man named Keith Maxwell?
I met him a few times. He was supposed to organize us as security guards, but I just said, I don't know. They were supposed to hire me to train people, but said they never did nothing. I don't think they went anywhere or did anything, so I don't know what the hell they did. Couldn't be bothered with this. Yeah, anyway, good luck on whatever you're looking for. Find out who killed President Kennedy. Do something important.
Okay, so in 93 we have you on a farm here in Johannesburg.
Yes.
Training together with Bob Cedars and Maxwell, dressing in white.
White, yeah. The naval shirt, white pants. There wasn't any firearms given to us or anything. It was more lectures and that kind of stuff, but it was based on normal military co-ops.
Perfect. Fascinating. Then Göran and I call another name of the list, a man named Alexander Jones.
Hello?
Yes, hello, Mr. Jones.
Yes.
And when we phone him, I simply ask him, did you ever hear anybody discuss Dag Hammarskjöld while you were active in Saimar?
I see. Now it's starting to get. Now I'm starting to get uncomfortable with the questioning.
And soon after, we meet with him. And he is the guy we have been looking for 6 years. So, simply put, what is Saimar?
Saimar was a clandestine, mercenary organization for hire.
Financed by whom?
Financed by foreign governments.
And what was the purpose of Saimar?
Saimar was there to go and destabilize certain countries. And basically, we were soldiers.
And what was your role specifically? Were you in the front line, so to speak?
Yes, I was definitely in the front line. Operational front line, hand-to-hand front line, fighting front line, leading operations, if you want to call it that.
Did you kill people yourself?
Yes.
Is it dangerous for you talking to us about this?
Definitely. Very. I mean, you know, I could get backlash from my own people. You sitting with a list of names, and all of those names on that list can be verified.
But why are you taking that risk, may I ask?
I think it's about time that we need closure. I need personal closure.
Basically, this is operational headquarters for SIMA. We should still be able to see reminiscence of military personnel being here. For example, well, we can go. There's the barracks down that side.
How many people did it involve, SIMA?
Anything from 5,000 people upwards.
That many?
That many. So SIMA was a big organization.
In front of us now would have been your main hall, which would have been your mess hall and your gathering place.
Look, SIMA was very clever in the way that they operated. You and I could be sitting in the same room, and you could belong to the medical division of SIMA, and I wouldn't know you from a bar of soap.
There would be dinners, formal dinners, you know, it depends on celebrating different occasions in the history of SIMA, that type of stuff.
Maxwell would come there in his old 18th century Commodore's uniform.
Really?
Yeah.
Like a Lord Nelson?
That's right, yeah. With a hat, everything. With a sword.
Look, they were very sucker to the 1800s British naval traditions and attire, especially the hierarchy. We wore normal whites.
This is a picture of...
Maxwell.
Yes.
Yes.
He was looking like that?
Yes. That's exactly what Commodore Maxwell looked like.
Did he wear white all the time?
All the time. I never ever saw him wear anything but white.
Always white?
Always white. This is Maxwell, yeah. Very intelligent person. Very manipulative. He commanded respect. If you met him, you just couldn't help showing respect to the gentleman.
He was charismatic?
Very. But also very dangerous.
Dangerous in what way?
If he didn't like you and if you posed a threat to him, he would take you out.
He would simply kill you?
Yeah.
Himself? Or
himself, yeah.
And what kind of operations were you doing?
Well, it was clandestine operations. We were involved in coups, taking over countries for other leaders. We were involved in Mozambique, spreading the AIDS virus through medical conditions. We were involved in Angola with Dr. Jonas Savimbi for various operations. We gave military support.
So people were killed during these operations?
Oh, definitely.
You mentioned...
Jörn, can we I just do the question again and then you can pop in?
Yeah.
You mentioned actively spreading AIDS?
There was a unit in from SIMA that one of the things was that we went into African countries.
And how was that done exactly?
Through inoculation.
Through vaccines?
Yeah, through vaccines. Pretending to inoculate people and that type of thing.
The idea being to kill black people?
Yeah, to eradicate black people. You must understand the concept was that AIDS was a killer. It was incurable at that point in time, so it was led to believe that if infected people, it was the quick, non-militaristic approach to eliminate black people.
And that is something you know for a fact, that AIDS was actively being spread to
Yes.
Other countries?
Yes. To African countries.
Before we continue with Alexander Jones, I should tell you about the case of Dagmar Feil.
Isn't it beautiful? I come from home, hey, Dagmar? Smile for the camera.
I happened to discover an advert placed in a South African newspaper from Saimar where they are looking for the killers of Dagmar Feil. And we managed to find the brother of Dagmar Feil, Carl Feil.
My sister came to me and she said to me she needed to confide in me. She needed to sit with me. And, sorry, I just...
No, of course.
Yeah, that's okay. I have a lot of guilt about it because she actually sat with me and said to me she thinks that they're going to kill her.
She told you that?
Yeah, and I said to her, who? And she said she doesn't know, but she thinks they're after her. And she said they'd already killed 3 or 4 people in the same team that she was part of. And I said, what team? And she said she couldn't tell me. The other thing that she said is she needs to come to church with me. She needs to make right with God. She fully expects to be dead within the next couple of weeks.
His sister Dagmar was recruited into Saimar. She had a background as a marine biologist.
So I believe you got your matric results. I mean, university.
University results, yeah.
How did it go?
Ah, it was very good.
What do you mean by good?
Well, I passed.
How well did you pass?
She did mention, in no particular detail, that what she'd studied was particularly helpful in the work that she was doing then. In other words, the research element of what she did in marine biology she was using on a daily basis in this particular role. But what I found very peculiar is that she had a regular office job in working as a secretary and an admin assistant in Johannesburg, but yet she was doing all this research behind the scenes. But she never ever told me what it was.
Was it like working in a laboratory?
Yes.
In a laboratory?
Yes.
Clinical research?
Yes.
But where?
She never told me. The topic of AIDS research came up several times, quite loosely in conversation. I never put 2 and 2 together.
And she became a white supremacist. And she traveled to Mozambique and other African countries bordering with South Africa to bring vaccines to people there. Countries such as Mozambique, Angola?
Yes, Swaziland, Botswana came up several times.
But she discovers that these vaccines from Saimar are contaminated. And she wants to tell the police, the authorities about what is going on. But before she managed to do so, she is murdered.
And I dashed across Johannesburg and got to her apartment, and I found her white VW Beetle parked in front of the security gates of her flat. I found her lying in the street.
Yeah.
Sorry. Such a long time ago, and it's still a bit of a shock.
It's November 1990?
Yeah.
Did the police investigate this murder?
No. They had absolutely no interest in pursuing the case at all.
Why?
I can't tell you.
Then we go to see Alexander Jones.
We were at war. Black people in South Africa were the enemy.
But so it was about white supremacy?
Definitely. Definitely trying to retain the white supremacy on the African continent.
And furthermore, he tells us that the purpose of Maxwell's clinics in and around Johannesburg was to infect black people with HIV.
He had the one in Tokoza, he had the one in Alex.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, there was on the West Strand. So, and these were research facilities for them to inject people with a solution to see that they prevented AIDS in it. In the meantime, they were injecting people with AIDS.
And he was only working on black people in these clinics?
Yes, yeah.
For almost nothing?
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. So you know what, I mean, what easier way to get a big guinea pig that you live in the apartheid system, black people have got no rights, they need medical treatment. There's a white philanthropist coming in and say, you know what, I'll open up these clinics and I will treat you, I will do this, and meantime, you actually the wolf in sheep's clothing.
That's gruesome.
Did you visit these clinics yourself?
Yes, I went to the clinic in Alex where there was the research facility, and there was monitors, there was tubes, there was a proper lab. If you want to say it's scientist lab, you know, a proper freaky scientist lab, definitely.
Were there clinics also in other countries?
Well, look, I know personally that I know of, our base of operations for this project was in Mozambique. That I can tell you.
Where Dagmar Feil was working?
Yes.
He knew about Dagmar Feil and what she did?
She was recruited to do medical research in Maxwell's labs in Alexander. And then obviously she progressed and she became part of the inner circle for the operations, and she went to Mozambique to fulfill her obligations. And when it came, word got out that she was going to testify.
She was going to inform the authorities about Saphir.
Correct, yes.
And the spread of AIDS.
That's right. And I think it's well known in our circles that it was Saphir themselves that took her out.
But why would Saphir place that advert?
Why wouldn't they?
It's like a decoy.
Exactly.
Another possible spin is there was an interview published in South Africa with Maxwell and an ensign, a woman named Debbie.
She's the young lady.
Yes.
Yes.
And
where she was at school when he recruited her from school.
Yes. We have tried to track her down, but we can't find her.
I don't think she's around anymore.
You don't think she's alive anymore?
Yeah.
But could that be Dagmar Feil?
No, it's not Dagmar.
It's not. It's two different women.
Her name is Debbie Campbell.
And Debbie's,
article, yes.
Debbie's no, but Debbie's blonde.
Would the South African government, the apartheid regime, would they have known that Saphir was spreading AIDS inside South Africa and outside as well to kill off black people?
Highly likely. Highly likely. That's why I'm telling you that's why people were killed for it.
That's why Dagmar Feil was killed, maybe?
Yeah. That's why Dagmar was killed.
And after the death of Dagmar, Dagmar's mother continues to investigate the case. She wants to find out who killed her daughter. She tried to give witness about the event to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
Okay.
They told her no, because it was too controversial.
Yeah.
The murders were never found. The case was not investigated.
And they would not listen to her. In fact, I think the second or third time that she went to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they escorted her out. Just the mention of the South African Maritime Institute made people nervous. They would not listen at all.
Then she befriends a Saphir officer, I believe maybe it's Maxwell, who feeds her information about Saphir and her daughter.
Yes.
He approached my mom, I don't know whether it was out of guilt or whether just a prick of his conscience. He contacted my mother and gave her a whole lot of documents. I believe they met several times. And in there are letterheads of the South African Maritime Institute. So this was the first time that I had ever heard of that institute.
Not long after, we go to an address in Johannesburg, where the personal belongings of Dagmar's mother are stored. She's dead now, Dagmar's mother. And in her belongings, we find an address book.
Uh-oh.
What, Jan?
I found an interesting name here.
What?
Maxwell, K. Maxwell.
You have Maxwell?
Yeah.
What? Would they meet on a regular basis, or?
Most of it was telephonic, and then at one stage, she was informed that he's going to Namibia. He's fleeing the country. He doesn't feel safe here, and he handed all of this documentation to her, and she never heard from him again.
Maxwell was fleeing to Namibia?
The country of Namibia came up frequently, yes.
René Gore.
No.
Here we have it. René Gore, Namibia.
That's René Gore. He was in Samoa. He was destined to take over from Commodore Maxwell. Yes.
And in that book, Dagmar's mother has made a number of notes. It says police, and then something has been crossed out. Then there is part of a name ending E-N-I-E, and then F-R-O-E-R. No, this is Grunewald.
Is?
It says Tini Grunewald.
Wow.
It says Tini Grunewald ordered Dagmar's murder plus 4 others.
This is incredible. In a way, it would make sense. I mean, Tini Grunewald, he was a key person, top figure in the military intelligence.
No, I can't see this organization as really playing a significant part. If they did, I would have known about it.
He's lying. The whole of South Africa knew about Samoa. Everybody in the military field knew about Samoa. The government knew about Samoa. That's why we were allowed to operate out of South African premises.
Were they taking orders from South African military, or?
No, I think our main orders came from the British government. That's my opinion.
The British government?
Yeah. Well, from our British handlers, controllers, whatever. To this day, I still believe that we were a subunit of some British entity.
Would you think that's really true?
You know, 3 days ago, I met Alexander Jones. He seemed very credible. He doesn't offer any documentation, but he sure seems to be a person who is in the know.
Let's put it this way. For 4 years after I left Samoa, they tried to recruit me back every single month.
Every month?
Every month, Maxwell would set up a meeting with me, send somebody, stuff like that. And eventually, it became to a point of where they were indicating of threatening my family. And Maxwell and I went to his offices one day in Alex, and I threatened him. I said to him straight, as much as you know people, you've got things. Remember, I've also got my own team. I said, you guys either back off or one of us are going to die. So it ended on bad terms in the sense of, because I had enough. I had a family. Once I started my family, I wasn't single anymore. It wasn't just me. And I had to take a responsibility in it. So you know what you do? My view of thinking is get rid of everything that can incriminate you or get...
So you destroyed everything pointing towards you and Samoa having a past together?
Yes.
But is it bad for the story?
Is it bad for the story?
This story?
Yes.
Because it begins with Göran Björkdahl and I trying to solve the mystery about who killed Dag Hammarskjöld.
Okay.
And then suddenly it's something entirely different.
But I was going to ask, is the mystery solved, or you just switched to something else now, or you don't mind about what was supposed to be solved in the first place?
So, did the South African Maritime Research Institute kill Dag Hammarskjöld?
I won't say, there was involvement.
What do you base this theory on?
There was photos that I can recall seeing in one of our meetings, and that has what they used as a recruitment tool. There was one photo where you could see where all the trees were burnt, where there was a forest. I assume it was a forest, where all the trees were burnt in it. You could see the anthills, stuff like that. There was a photo of the guys in their fatigues, standing on the anthills and that. And then there was the photo of the plane on one side. So we were given 3 photos.
What guys were on the photo?
Maxwell was in the photo. He was very young.
Keith Maxwell?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was definitely there because that was the thing. And I can still remember the picture. He was still wearing shorts, long socks, and combat boots with his camouflage hat. There was 2 other guys. One was in full military fatigues. And then he had a beard.
Could the bearded guy be the agent codenamed Congo Red?
Yeah, I would say 80% probably that would have been Congo Red.
That would be Congo Red.
Yeah.
Did you already summarize the whole story?
No.
Not yet?
No.
Maybe I can get an idea when you summarize it.
We do manage to establish that Saphir was very real. But still, it borders on fiction. Some of it is real and some of it is very difficult to prove. Maxwell meets with a South African journalist named David Potgieter,
yes.
And he gives him a lot of Saphir documents, including a sort of memoir written by Maxwell called The Story of My Life. It's a fictionalized account of Maxwell's life. But the part he gave David Potgieter is not the full story. The last part of the story is to be found in the possession of Dagmar Feil's mother.
Okay, that I found very strange.
Did your mother get this at one time only?
Yes. Yes. I think just prior to this, Lieutenant Maxwell or Commander Maxwell, however he referred to himself, I think at the point where he was ready to leave, he gave my mother everything he had in hand to aid her and help her to find the murderer. Because why else would he have done this?
Yeah, I want to be sure that this is actually Maxwell writing these memoirs. This is his handwriting, right?
Yeah, no, this is Maxwell's handwriting.
Would he have been doing because some of the pages had been written on a typewriter and some of them are in hand.
Yeah, he had one of those old typewriters, if you want to call it. Yes. So it's possible, yeah.
Would he have done the typing himself?
Yes, yeah. But stuff like that, he would not.
Would not use a secretary?
He would not use a secretary. He wouldn't he wouldn't use his wife. One thing I can say, if we were having talks about Saphir and his wife came into the room wherever we were, whatever, he'd tell her to leave.
It seems quite bizarre. It almost looks like the rantings of a person who's losing his mind.
Why would he write a fictionalized account of his life?
You know that at the end of his life he had lost it.
He had gone mad.
So only he would know.
In the part of the manuscript of Keith Maxwell's memoir that was given to Dagmar Fell's mother, he provides the context for the Operation Celeste papers, which suggests that Maxwell knew about Operation Celeste, the plan to kill Dag Hammarskjöld, before the papers ended up in the hands of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 1998.
Has everybody got a copy of this set of documents? Institute for Maritime Research.
This part of the manuscript is handwritten. Maxwell writes about how the men of the Marine Institute have plans for Dag. In the manuscript, Commodore Wagman chairs a brainstorming session about ways to kill the General Secretary when he comes to the Congo. One of the officers suggests poisoning Dag Hammarskjöld with potassium cyanide, much to the displeasure of Wagman. The agent known as Congo Red is present at the meeting and is just about to open his mouth when Commodore Wagman says, No, I don't want hours of discussion about possible methods. I want a workable plan with at least 3 alternatives on my desk within 7 days.
Option 1 was the bomb to disable the plane to bring it down. That would have been choice number 1, so that the plane crashes. Number 2, have the fighter jet around as a contingency in case the bomb didn't do the damage that it did in the plane and shoot the plane down. Number 3, have the contingency shooting from the ground to bring the plane ground and clean up.
There is a picture of Dag Hammarskjöld, and in the picture of Dag Hammarskjöld, there is a playing card tucked in his shirt collar.
Yes, there's an ace.
Yes.
Yes, there's an ace.
The ace of spades.
The ace of spades, and that was well known in security circles. That was the way that the CIA operated. That was a CIA card, and that's why I say the CIA was involved.
So that is a calling card from the CIA?
That's a calling card from the CIA.
Did you encounter the ace of spades being used later on in your own career in Saimar?
In Saimar, yes, once or twice. Up in the DRC itself.
And that was also because of CIA involvement?
Because of CIA involvement. And I would even go and... Can you switch off?
Next, Maxwell writes about how a Saimar operative plants a bomb in the wheelbay of Dag Hammarskjöld's plane. Then follows an emergency meeting in Saimar's Situation Room at 2 o'clock in the morning on the 18th of September 1961. An operative has phoned to say that the bomb did not explode at takeoff. Commodore Wagman says, "Gentlemen, it's 2:30. Go home and get some sleep. We'll work something out in the morning." So in Maxwell's memoir, we have a Commodore Wagman who seems to be the same person as Commodore Wagner, who signs off on the Operation Celeste papers. But then we showed Grünewald these documents, and he was totally dismissive of them. He said you would never put something like that on paper. He said it's very unprofessional.
It's not professional. Not professional at all.
I disagree, because a lot of our stuff went on paper. I disagree.
So it would be normal for Saimar to put things like this on paper?
To the relevant people, yes.
The purpose being?
For confirmation purposes, to say that there's backing, that there's approval, yes, that it's sanctioned.
So Saimar had in fact its own bureaucracy?
Yes, definitely. Very, and they were very strict and particular about it. For example, let's go back a few steps. When we saw Commodore Wagner, etiquette is you were not allowed to approach him.
You met Wagner?
Not personally, but I remember him being at one of the meetings.
You saw him?
Yes.
What did he look like?
Yeah, he was an old, frail man at that point in time.
Because for us, it is totally impossible to find anything about him.
Look, I know he was a businessman. Definitely.
What kind of business?
If I remember it correctly, it was something to do in the medical field.
Then a knock on the door. A lieutenant enters, salutes the Commodore, and hands him a slip of paper. "What is this?" "Oh my God, it worked," Wagman said, and waved the message at the others. She blew on approach to Ndola at around midnight. It worked. By God, it worked. There were smiles all around. Congo Red had delivered. In the last part of Maxwell's memoirs, he writes about going to visit the archives of Saimaa, which are, according to Maxwell's script, located in a shopping mall in Randburg. And there an antique shop is to be found, managed by a man named Mr. Hadley. You know anyone named Mr. Hadley having an antique shop? No. He enters the shop, and in the back room there is a filing cabinet containing what Maxwell calls the travelogue. It's all the microfilms and pictures from Saimaa operations in foreign countries from, I think, 52 to 84. But he seems to be especially concerned about year 1961. Yeah. He takes all of this material with him and goes back to himself and burns it, destroys all the pictures, all the microfilm.
But that sounds something like Maxwell would do. That is something that he would do. Anybody that resisted any white form of manipulation on the African continent, Saimaa was prepared to go and quell those for a price, at a cost. And that was one thing that Dag Hammarskjöld was totally against. And he wanted every country for the people of the country. And obviously when you've got investments, when there's minerals, gold, diamonds, oil and all of that stuff, and we all know which countries think, he was a threat.
We countered effectively efforts from all sides to make the Congo a happy hunting ground for national interests. To be a roadblock to such efforts is to make yourself the target of attacks from all those who find their plans thwarted.
He was killed because he was going to change the way that Africa dealt with the rest of the world financially. And he was a threat. And who's got the most to lose? Corporate business worldwide. People are greedy. People want what others have got, and they don't want to pay for it. That's why they come to Africa. Because Africa seemed to be easy in third world. And now Africa's starting to fight back. And I think it would have happened 30 years ago, 40 years ago, if Dag Hammarskjöld had his way. Africa would have been a completely different continent today if Dag Hammarskjöld was allowed to live and follow through on his mandate.
So,
yes,
the last narration is about Göran Björkdahl will continue his work. Last I heard of him, he had gone up the Congo River.
Last I heard of him, he had gone up the Congo River looking for Maxwell's secret jungle laboratory.
Albertina, Pelosia, Pena glata, Johnny Pena tapoe. Albertina, Comboia Lotia, Pena glata, Johnny Pena tapoe. Sako basenga biera, na pesa biera mbango, komi toke na mboka, komi ya betomba. Sako basenga biera, na pesa biera mbango, komi toke na mboka, komi ya betomba. Albertina, como ya lo sia, pena plata, Johnny pena taboe. Albertina, como ya lo sia,